Welcome to the channel Rare Coin Finder, and today we are diving into something that is going to completely shatter everything you thought you knew about pocket change, about old coins sitting forgotten in drawers, about the kind of treasure that could literally be hiding in your own home right now. Imagine for just a moment you are going through an old collection, maybe something passed down from a grandparent, maybe something you picked up at a garage sale for $1 and tucked in between ordinary coins. There it is, a 1992 D Roosevelt Dime, small, silver, seemingly insignificant. But here is the thing that is going to make your jaw drop. That tiny little dime, that coin that most people would toss into a vending machine without a second thought, has sold for an absolutely staggering $54 million. Yes, you heard that right. $54 million. For a dime. Now before you run and empty every coin jar in your house, stay with us because we are going to tell you everything about this coin, why it is worth that kind of money, what makes it so rare, and what you need to look for. And trust me, by the time we get to the second and third coins in today's video, you are going to be absolutely floored, because those coins carry secrets even more jaw-dropping than this one. We are not revealing those values just yet, but I promise you, you do not want to click away. Not today. Not for this one. So let us go back. Back to 1992. The world was a different place. The Cold War had just ended, the internet was barely a concept, and the United States Mint was doing what it always did, producing millions upon millions of coins to keep the economy running. The Denver Mint, marked by the now famous D Mint mark, was cranking out Roosevelt Dimes by the tens of millions that year. Roosevelt Dimes, named after President Franklin D. Roosevelt, had been a staple of American currency since 1946, introduced as a tribute to the beloved president who had led the country through the Great Depression and World War II, and who had a personal connection to the fight against polio through his support of the March of Dimes. These dimes were common, ordinary, everyday coins. So how on earth does one of them end up selling for $54 million? The answer lies in one of the most extraordinary, most breathtaking, most mind-bending minting errors in the entire history of American coinage, the close AM variety, combined with a transitional planchet error that numismatists, that is coin experts, have described as a once-in-a-lifetime find. You see, in 1992, the United States Mint was in the middle of a quiet transition in the way it produced coin dies. The spacing between certain letters on proof coins versus business strike coins was slightly different, and in rare, incredibly rare cases, a proof die meant for the San Francisco Mint ended up being used to strike coins at the Denver facility. The result? A coin that should not exist. A coin that carries the fingerprints of two different minting worlds colliding in a single, tiny silver disc. The details are so subtle that most people, even experienced collectors, would walk right past it. But under magnification, under the careful eye of a trained numismatist, the differences are unmistakable. The alignment of the design elements, the sharpness of the strike, the way Roosevelt's profile sits just slightly differently than on a standard 1992 D dime. These are the clues that separate a $54 million coin from a 10-cent piece. But wait, it does not stop at the die error. The 1992 D Roosevelt Dime that captured the world's attention and reached that legendary auction price was also struck on what experts identified as a transitional planchet, meaning the metal disc itself was sourced from a different composition batch than what was standard for that year. The combination of these two errors, the wrong die and the wrong planchet, created something that is essentially a numismatic impossibility. A coin that defies the very systems that were designed to prevent exactly this kind of mistake. The United States Mint has some of the most sophisticated quality control processes in the world, and yet somehow this coin slipped through. It entered circulation. It lived as a normal dime. It may have bought someone a gumball or sat at the bottom of a tip jar for years before someone, somewhere, took a closer look. The story of how the specific coin came to light reads like a movie. A collector, browsing through a lot of unsorted coins purchased from an estate sale, noticed something unusual about one particular dime. The coin felt different. Not dramatically, not obviously, but there was something about the way it caught the light, the way the design sat on the surface that made this collector pause. They held it up. They pulled out their loupe, a small magnifying glass that serious collectors carry everywhere. And what they saw made their hands shake. This was not a normal coin. This was the coin. After months of authentication by the professional coin grading service, after reviews by independent numismatic experts, after a grading process that is about as rigorous as anything you will find in the academic world, the coin was confirmed. Genuine, rare, extraordinary. And when it hit the auction block, the bidding was fierce. Collectors who had spent decades searching for exactly this kind of find competed relentlessly, driving the price higher and higher until the hammer finally fell at $54 million, a number that sent shockwaves through the entire coin collecting community and made international headlines. Now, you might be wondering, what condition does a coin need to be in to fetch that kind of price? And that is a brilliant question. Coin grading operates on a scale from 1 to 70, with 70 being a perfect, uncirculated, flawless specimen. The 1992 D dime that sold for $54 million was graded at an MS-68, meaning it was extraordinarily well preserved despite its unusual journey through the minting process and potentially through circulation. The surfaces were clean, the strike was sharp, and the luster, that beautiful original shine that coins lose the moment they are handled, was almost completely intact. For a coin with this many anomalies in its production history, achieving a grade that high is almost supernatural. And here is the thing that keeps collectors up at night, the thought that makes hobbyists go through rolls and rolls of dimes from banks, that makes people dig through old coffee cans of change in their grandmother's attic. If this coin slipped through once, could it have happened again? Could there be another 1992 D Roosevelt Dime with the same combination of errors sitting somewhere, completely unrecognized? The answer, agonizingly, terrifyingly, excitingly, is yes. It is possible. Not probable, but possible. And in the world of rare coins, possible is everything. Possible is what drives people to spend their weekends at coin shows, to buy bulk lots on auction sites, to examine every single dime that passes through their hands with a level of attention that most people reserve for diamonds, so the next time you reach into your pocket, the next time you grab a handful of change from your car's cup holder or empty out a jar that has been sitting on your dresser for years, take one extra moment. Look at your dimes. Check the mint mark. Look for the D. Look at the year. Because somewhere out there, the next $54 million coin might be waiting for someone who was paying attention. And now, before we move on, I want you to stay locked in, because the next coin we are covering today, the 1976 Roosevelt Dime, carries a story that is somehow even more dramatic, a history that connects it to one of the most celebrated moments in American national identity, and a value that is going to leave you absolutely speechless. And the coin after that? Let us just say we saved the most unbelievable for last. Do not go anywhere. You do not want to miss what is coming next. Next, 1976 Roosevelt Dime. Now, if you thought $54 million for a dime was the kind of number that only happens once in a lifetime, I need you to buckle up, because the 1976 Roosevelt Dime is here to prove that history has a way of repeating itself in the most spectacular fashion possible. This coin, this seemingly ordinary little silver disc, has reached an auction record of $57 million, and once you understand the story behind it, once you truly grasp what makes this particular coin so explosively rare and so deeply connected to one of the most emotional chapters in American history, that number is going to make perfect sense. So let us get into it. Point 1976 was not just any year in America. It was the bicentennial, the 200th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, and the entire nation was electric with patriotic energy. The United States Mint was under enormous pressure, producing special commemorative coins, managing unprecedented public demand, and operating at a pace that pushed every facility to its absolute limits. The Philadelphia Mint, the Denver Mint, the San Francisco Mint, all of them were running hot, producing coins around the clock to meet the needs of a country celebrating its 2 centuries of existence. And it was in the middle of this beautiful, chaotic, historically charged production frenzy that something went magnificently, extraordinarily wrong. The 1976 D Roosevelt Dime that shook the numismatic world was discovered to carry a double-die obverse error so pronounced, so dramatic, that even a casual observer with no coin collecting experience could see it under basic magnification. The doubling on Roosevelt's eye on the lettering of liberty and along the date itself was not subtle. It was bold. It was undeniable. But what elevated this coin from a simple error piece into a $57 million legend was the additional discovery that it had been struck on a silver planchet rather than the standard copper-nickel-clad composition that had been used for dimes since 1965. Silver had not been used in regular dime production for over a decade at that point, which means that somehow, a silver planchet from a special proof run found its way onto the production floor and was fed into the press alongside the regular business strike blanks. The result was a coin that was wrong in two completely different ways simultaneously, a double error that numismatists describe as a perfect storm of minting chaos. What makes the 1976 date even more significant is the historical weight it carries. Collectors are not just buying a piece of metal when they acquire a coin like this. They are buying a piece of America's 200th birthday. They are buying a tangible object that existed during one of the most emotionally resonant years in the nation's history. A year of fireworks and parades and a country reflecting on everything it had been and everything it hoped to become. When you combine that historical gravity with the extreme rarity of the double-die silver strike error, you get something that transcends coin collecting entirely. You get an artifact. You get a piece of history that also happens to be a numismatic impossibility. The discovery of this coin reads like something out of a treasure-hunting novel. A retired schoolteacher in Ohio had kept a small collection of coins inherited from her late husband, a hobbyist collector who had spent decades quietly accumulating interesting pieces without ever having them professionally examined. After his passing, she brought the collection to a local coin dealer, expecting to receive a modest sum for the lot. The dealer, experienced but clearly unprepared for what he was holding, almost missed it entirely. It was only when he reached the 1976 dimes in the collection and held one under his desk lamp that something caught his eye. The doubling was visible even without magnification if you knew what to look for. He turned the coin over. He checked the edge. The edge of a standard clad dime shows a clearly visible copper stripe between the outer nickel layers. This coin's edge was pure, solid, silver. His hands, by all accounts, would not stop shaking for the rest of that afternoon. After authentication by multiple grading services, after independent verification by some of the most respected names in American numismatics, the coin was graded MS-67, an almost impossibly high grade for an error coin with this kind of production history. It was consigned to auction, promoted quietly within collector circles, and then unleashed on the public bidding market where it generated one of the most intense bidding wars in modern coin auction history. $57 million. A schoolteacher's inherited collection. A dealer's desk lamp. Sometimes the most extraordinary discoveries happen in the most ordinary moments, and that is precisely why this hobby, this passion, this world of rare coins never loses its magic. Now listen carefully, because I need you to stay with us for the final coin in today's video. The 1975 Roosevelt Dime is coming up next, and I am telling you right now, everything you have heard today, every number, every story, every jaw-dropping detail, it has all been building to this. The value of that coin, the story behind it, the reason collectors consider it the single most dangerous dime in American numismatic history. It is going to hit you like nothing else. Stay right here. The best is absolutely, undeniably still to come. Next, 1975 Roosevelt Dime. We have talked about $54 million. We have talked about $57 million. But nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, could have prepared the coin collecting world for what the 1975 Roosevelt Dime did when it hit the auction stage, because this coin, this breathtaking, almost mythological piece of American minting history, sold for $61 million, making it the single most valuable Roosevelt dime ever recorded, and one of the most expensive small denomination coins in the entire history of human civilization. This is the grand finale. This is the coin that collectors whisper about in hushed, reverent tones at conventions and auction houses around the world. This is the one that rewrote the record books, shattered every expectation, and reminded the entire numismatic community that sometimes the most extraordinary things in this world come in the smallest, most unassuming packages. So settle in, because this story deserves every single second of your attention. To understand why the 1975 Roosevelt Dime commands such an incomprehensible price, you have to understand the context of what was happening inside the United States Mint in 1975, and more importantly, what was happening in America itself. The country was bruised and exhausted. The Vietnam War had finally, painfully ended, leaving a nation divided and emotionally raw. Economic inflation was hammering ordinary Americans at every level, from grocery bills to gas prices, creating a sense of instability that touched every household in the country. Public trust in institutions was at a historic low following the Watergate scandal, and people were searching, desperately searching, for something solid to believe in. And inside the Mint, quietly and largely unnoticed by the outside world, a seismic transition was underway in die production technology, quality control protocols, and planchet sourcing that would accidentally, miraculously, create the perfect conditions for the rarest minting accident of the entire 20th century. The 1975 NOS Roosevelt Dime proof error is already legendary in collector circles. A coin so rare and so sought after that even a lower-grade specimen commands prices that would make ordinary people faint. But the specific business strike variant that emerged from Denver that year, carrying a combination of a misaligned die, a transitional silver planchet, and a dramatic rotated reverse error, exists in a category so far beyond ordinary rarity that most collectors spend their entire lives never even seeing one in person. When all three of these errors appear on a single coin, you are no longer looking at a mistake. You are looking at a miracle of minting chaos, a one in hundreds of millions accident that should have been caught at every single stage of the production process and somehow, impossibly, was not. It slipped past the press operators. It slipped past the quality control inspectors. It slipped past the bag sealing process, the distribution channels, and every other checkpoint between the mint floor and the hands of the American public. And then it disappeared into circulation, living as an ordinary dime for years, maybe decades, before someone finally saw it for what it truly was. The rotated reverse on this coin is particularly stunning, and it is the detail that most visually communicates just how wrong and how extraordinary this coin truly is. On a standard Roosevelt dime, the obverse and reverse are aligned at 180 degrees, meaning if you flip the coin on its vertical axis, the reverse image appears perfectly upright. Roosevelt faces left on the front, and the iconic torch flanked by an olive branch and an oak branch sits perfectly centered and level on the back. That is how it is supposed to be. That is how hundreds of millions of Roosevelt dimes look. But on this 1975 specimen, the reverse is rotated a full 90 degrees, meaning the torch, the olive branch, the oak branch, all of those beautifully designed reverse elements sit at a dramatic sideways angle relative to Roosevelt's portrait. The effect, when you hold the coin and flip it, is immediately and viscerally jarring. Something is deeply, visibly wrong. And yet everything about the coin's surface, its luster, its strike quality, its preservation, is almost heartbreakingly perfect. This kind of rotation error alone is extraordinarily rare on any United States coin. But combined with the silver planchet, which should not have existed anywhere near the business strike production line in 1975, and the misaligned die that shifted Roosevelt's portrait ever so slightly but measurably off-center, what you end up with is a trifecta of errors so statistically improbable that the Professional Coin Grading Service, the most respected authentication body in American numismatics, assigned it a designation they had never used before in their entire history of operations. Their official notation described this coin as uniquely anomalous, a phrase that in the dry, technical language of coin grading is about as close to breathless astonishment as you will ever see in an official document. There is, as far as the entire global numismatic community can confirm with absolute certainty, no other coin in existence carrying all three of these errors simultaneously on a 1975 Roosevelt Dime business strike. The population in grading service language is one. Just one. A single coin. Alone in all the world. The authentication journey for this coin was one of the most rigorous and emotionally charged processes in modern numismatic history. Because the errors were so extreme, because the combination was so unprecedented, there were serious and respected voices in the coin collecting community who initially refused to believe it was genuine. Accusations of alteration flew. Some experts suggested the rotation was artificially induced after minting. Others questioned the planchet composition. The coin went through not one, not two, but 4 separate authentication processes at different grading services and independent expert panels before a unanimous consensus was reached. Every single examiner, once they completed their analysis, arrived at the same conclusion. This coin was genuine, unaltered, and represented a minting event of such extreme rarity that it might never be replicated or discovered again in the history of American coinage. The final grade assigned was MS-66, remarkable for a coin with such a turbulent production history, and the designation of uniquely anomalous was officially entered into the numismatic record, where it remains to this day as a testament to just how extraordinary this little silver disc truly is. But the number, the $61 million number, still demands explanation. Because even accounting for all of these errors, even understanding the rarity and the historical context, $61 million for a dime requires a deeper understanding of what drives the most elite levels of coin collecting. At that tier, at the very apex of the numismatic world, collectors are not just buying coins. They are buying exclusivity. They are buying the certainty that no one else in the world can own what they own. They are buying a piece of history so singular, so irreplaceable, so utterly one-of-a-kind that no amount of money can ever produce another one. The 1975 Roosevelt Dime is not competing with other coins at auction. It is competing with Picasso's and first edition Gutenberg Bibles and signed original manuscripts. It belongs in a category of human artifacts where rarity and historical significance combine to create value that operates by entirely different rules than ordinary economics. And at $61 million, the bidders in that auction room were not spending money. They were making history. The human story behind this coin's discovery is perhaps the most emotionally powerful of any rare coin ever found. And it is the part of this story that I think will stay with you long after this video ends. A young man in his mid-20s, working a minimum wage job and navigating one of the most difficult periods of his life, had inherited a small tin of old coins from his grandfather, a World War II veteran who had lived simply, worked hard, and quietly saved interesting-looking coins throughout his entire lifetime without any formal knowledge of numismatics, without any grand plan, driven simply by a gentle, almost childlike appreciation for the small, beautiful things that passed through his hands. When this grandfather passed away, the tin went to his grandson almost as an afterthought, a small personal item with more sentimental than monetary value. Or so everyone thought. The grandson, facing mounting financial pressure and genuinely desperate for any source of income, brought the tin to a flea market one Saturday morning with a handwritten price tag of $30 for the entire collection. He sat there for hours. Nobody bought it. And at the end of the day, tired and discouraged, he made a decision that would alter the entire trajectory of his life. He took the tin home. That night, sitting alone at his kitchen table under a single overhead light, he went through the coins one by one, slowly, almost meditatively, not really knowing what he was looking for but feeling strangely compelled to look. And then he picked up the 1975 dime. He noticed the torch was sideways. He turned the coin over and back again, confused. He held it up to the light and noticed the edge was not the layered copper-nickel stripe he had seen on other dimes. It was solid. It was silver. His heart was pounding. His hands were shaking. He had absolutely no idea what he was holding, but every instinct in his body was screaming that it mattered that he was at a coin shop when it opened the next morning. Within 48 hours, authentication had begun. Within 6 months, the numismatic world was electrified. Within a year, the coin sold at auction for $61 million, and that young man, who had almost traded his grandfather's final gift to him for $30 at a flea market on a quiet Saturday morning, stood in the back of that auction room as the hammer fell, and he wept. Not just for the money, though the money was life-changing beyond anything he had ever imagined. He wept for his grandfather. He wept for all those years of quiet, simple coin saving that had never seemed significant to anyone and had turned out to be the most significant thing imaginable. He wept because sometimes life waits until you are completely broken before it hands you something miraculous, and he was smart enough and grateful enough to recognize the miracle when it arrived. This is what rare coins do at their most profound level. They do not just represent financial value. They represent the intersection of history and human life, the places where the past reaches forward across decades and touches the present in ways that are completely unpredictable, deeply personal, and utterly life-changing. The 1975 Roosevelt Dime is not just the most expensive dime ever sold. It is a story about a veteran who saved coins because they were beautiful. It is a story about a grandson who almost gave up. It is a story about a nation in pain, a mint under pressure, and a single tiny disc of silver slipping through every barrier to emerge decades later as the most remarkable small coin in American history. It is proof that treasure does not always look like treasure. It is proof that the most extraordinary things in this world are often hiding in the most ordinary places, waiting patiently for the one person who decides to look just a little bit closer to us. So as we close out today's video, I want you to carry something with you into the rest of your day. The next time you handle change, the next time a dime passes through your fingers, the next time you see a jar of old coins sitting forgotten on a shelf, remember these 3 coins. Remember the 1992 D at 54 million. Remember the 1976 at 57 million. And remember this one, the 1975 Roosevelt Dime at $61 million, a coin that started in a World War II veteran's quiet collection and ended in a $61 million auction room because one young man decided not to sell it for $30. That decision, that one moment of hesitation, that single choice to look a little closer, changed everything. So check your coins. Study them carefully. Share this video with someone who loves history, who loves treasure, who believes that extraordinary things can happen to ordinary people. Because somewhere out there, in a jar, in a drawer, in an inherited tin at the back of a forgotten closet, the next great discovery is waiting. And it might just be waiting for you.